Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you for everyone that decided to kick off 2025 by thinking about how you could actually measure what matters most to your purpose-driven organization. I'm going to start off, I'm going to talk a little bit about just the right relationship between purpose and performance, talk a little bit about how they complement and enhance one another, and share a few best practices from some of the organizations I've been able to work with over the years and how they've created unique key purpose indicators that live alongside their key performance indicators to actually track the fulfillment of their purpose. And then we'll dive into First United Bank that has a very noble purpose. And we went to great lengths to really think, how are we going to actually measure whether or not we're helping our employees, our customers, and ultimately even our communities to spend life wisely? It's a big, ambitious goal. And so we worked to develop, as Michael said, a Spend Life Wisely index that we'll share with you kind of the journey we took to get there. So I want to start a little bit by looking at how we probably got into the complete commitment to key performance indicators. You know, Milton Friedman set up that the only responsibility a company has is to maximize profits for shareholders. And if that's true, then certainly being beholden to key performance indicators that look at profitability, market share, stock value would be the be all end all indicator of success. But as conscious capitalists, we know there's more to the story than merely maximizing profits for shareholders. As Ed Freeman, who's one of the father of multi-stakeholder model, put it, he used this great metaphor where he said, humans need red blood cells to live, but the purpose of life is not to produce red blood cells. Companies need profit to live, but that's not why they exist. You know, they're absolutely fundamental to your existence, but that's not what gets you out of bed every day thinking about how you're going to invest your time, talent, and energy. Hopefully it's in service of something more than just producing red blood cells. I also like the way Brad put it from Pixar, who said, money's just fuel for the rocket. What I really want to do is go somewhere. So where do you want to go? What are you trying to do? What kind of impact are you trying to have in the world? And you're going to need profitability and performance to get you there, but don't confuse the two aims. What we really want to do is figure out how we can measure what really matters. And I'm going to start by letting one of the Kennedys share a great look at the things that we measure, that we typically measure, that have to do with performance and growth, and how they're really out of sync with what it is that actually matters. So I'll play this.
Too much and for too long, we seem to have surrendered personal excellence and community value in the mere accumulation of material things. Our gross national product now is over $800 billion a year. But that gross national product, if we judge the United States of America by that gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for our doors and the jails for the people who break them. It counts the destruction of the redwoods and the loss of our natural wonder in chaotic sprawl. It counts napalm, and it counts nuclear warheads and armored cars for the police to fight the riots in our cities. It counts Whitman's rifle and Speck's knife and the television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except why we are proud that we are Americans.
That's so powerful. I love that line. It measures everything in short except that which makes life meaningful.
Too much and for
Whoops. So, and that to me is evocative of, many of you are probably familiar with the little country of Bhutan and how the king of Bhutan actually inspired and a lot by a similar philosophy, realized that gross national happiness is a lot more important than gross domestic product. The gross domestic product will tell you one thing about the health of an economy, but it won't tell you about the health, the happiness, the fulfillment, and the well-being of its citizens. And so they actually have a legal code that was formulated in 1629 that said, if the government cannot create happiness for its people, then there is no purpose for government to exist. Let that sink in for a minute. That's a pretty powerful concept. And the current prime minister, just building on this notion of what does it mean to be creators and arbiters of happiness for your citizens? We know that true abiding happiness cannot exist while others suffer and comes only from serving others, living in harmony with nature, and realizing our innate wisdom and the true brilliant nature of our own minds. So, in thinking about gross national happiness, it required them to think about what is our philosophy? What do we believe creates happiness? What are the conditions? And with that in mind, they developed 4 pillars that are actually, they believe, are fundamental to citizens being happy: sustainable and equitable socioeconomic development, environmental preservation, the promotion of culture, and good governance. So those are kind of the 4 pillars that they find foundational to happiness. And then they took the extra step to say, if you kind of double click on those pillars, there's going to be 9 different domains: psychological well-being, health, education, cultural diversity and cultural resilience, how people are using their time, governance, community vitality, how do people feel in their communities, the ecological diversity, and the living standard. So they have 33 indicators that go along with those nine domains, and they've weighted them in terms of their importance, that they believe these are going to be the critical indicators that are going to give us a sense of the happiness of our people. I'm not going to go into this too much further, but I thought it's a great example of the extent to which, if you say you're in the happiness business, as their government does, what are you going to do to measure it? What are the indicators that you're going to track over time? That'll not only give you an idea of how well you're doing, but they're also wonderfully diagnostic tools to actually tell you, where do you need to be investing? What public policies do you need to double down on, because you're not seeing the kind of impact you'd like to have. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship between performance and purpose. We're in no way minimizing the importance of key performance indicators. I have this picture of the tango there because it's kind of, they go together. They support one another. They should be working in lockstep with each other. And I thought this quote from Grant Reed, the former CEO of Mars, said it well. He said, "Performance without purpose isn't meaningful, and purpose without performance isn't possible." You know, if all you do is focus on performance and market share and stock price, it's probably not going to generate too many goosebumps for your people. But if you talk about, here's the impact we're having, here's why what you do matters, here's the problems we're solving in the world, and by the way, we can do that more and better because we have the resources, the fuel, the profitability to drive all the great ideas that we have to actually have the kind of impact we want. So I'm going to share with you a couple examples to kind of take this from the conceptual to the practical. So Southwest Airlines was one of the organizations that I learned just about everything I know about purpose from, having the good fortune to have worked with Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett for about 16 years. Their conception of the purpose of Southwest Airlines was to give people the freedom to fly. They thought of themselves as being in the freedom business. That's what all those low fares, frequent flights, and friendly people were in the service of. So of course, they measured all of the things you would expect an airline to measure: load factors, market penetration, market share, profitability, which, by the way, they had the highest 30 consecutive years of profitability, which is unheard of in the airline industry. Highest performing domestic airline, hands down, and probably one of the top 3 highest performing airlines in the world. However, they also tracked key purpose indicators. So if they're in the freedom business and they're saying we're going to give people the freedom to fly, well, what would you want to know? You'd want to know, well, what percentage of the population has flown as a result of Southwest Airlines entering the market? And when they started, it's hard to imagine, but only about 15% of Americans had flown back in the 70s when they began. And if you go to their headquarters in Love Field, you'll see a giant arrow going up and to the right that shows the percentage of people that had flown by the time, I would say in the early or mid 2000s, it was upwards of 95%. They actually worked with the Department of Transportation to measure the impact that Southwest had on the incidence of the population that traveled when they entered a market. And it was actually deemed the Southwest effect because whenever they entered a market, they tended to increase travel upwards of 20%. So that was another indicator of their impact they were having on democratizing the skies. And they also look at the frequency of travel among Southwest customers versus the industry standard, which is also significantly higher. So being another indicator that they are giving people freedom to fly more so than the other guys. Another organization I worked with for many, many years, starting with Lee Scott up through Doug McMillan, is Walmart. And they see their purpose as saving people money and helping them live better. Now, you can bet your bottom dollar that Walmart's looking at all the KPI performance indicators like comp store sales, operating margin, things like that. But they also say if we're going to be in the business of saving people money, we want to track just how well we're doing that. So they actually look at the impact that they're having on the cost of living. And on average, the cost of living is reduced by about $3,400 per year if you are a Walmart shopper or living within a 6-mile radius of a Walmart. They also just ask people, here's the other thing, this doesn't have to be that complicated. In their ANU studies and their brand tracker studies, one of the attributes that we measure among customers is agreement with the statement, Walmart saves me money and helps me live better. And that is always upwards in the 80 and 90% range of their shoppers agreeing with that. IKEA is another member of the conscious capitalist community. Their purpose, to create a better everyday life for the many people. And again, they look at things like same store sales growth, revenue growth, tickets per customers, NPS scores. But they also have created something called the affordability index. So they want to look at what is the price of living spaces furnished by IKEA versus competitors. And it's significantly lower, giving the sense that you're able to create a quality of life and an ambiance and a feel in your home at a much more affordable price point than you could otherwise. They also measure all kinds of things that are in line with their creating a better everyday life from a sustainability perspective by tracking the percentage of their products that are incorporating recycled or sustainably sourced materials. Starbucks is another company that has been a part of the conscious capitalism community since the beginning, and their purpose is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. Again, they've got your traditional key performance indicators you would expect, but they also develop purpose indicators that really go along with that one person, one cup, and one neighborhood. So each person that they want to nurture is their own employees. So they look at employee development rates, so participation in college, job skills programs, and volunteer programs. That cup is a representation of farmers and coffee farmers behind that cup. And so they measure things like farmer equity and prosperity to measure income growth and the living conditions of coffee farmers. And then that one neighborhood at a time, they want to see what kind of impact they're having in their community. So they track their reinvestments in local neighborhoods, measurement of local economic growth as a result of all of the traffic that's created by a Starbucks coming into a community. And lastly, Patagonia, who was featured at the CEO Summit this year, they have a pretty ambitious purpose to save our home planet. Of course, as an apparel and lifestyle company, they're looking at all kinds of things like revenue growth, gross margin, inventory, blah, blah, blah. Shouldn't say blah, blah, blah. It's very important, those things. But they're much more passionate about their key purpose indicators. They look at the percentage of revenue that's invested in environmental activism and grassroots organizations. They track the amount of land and water that's been preserved or restored as a result of their efforts. They look at the number of lawsuits supported and funded and track that in a transparent way. And they also want to inspire customer activism, the number of customers participating in environmental campaigns and petitions as a result of stimulus from the Patagonia brand. So really meaningful, thoughtful ways of, if this is our purpose, what are the indicators that would let us know we are doing an effective job or not at fulfilling that purpose? So one just exercise, I call this the blatantly obvious exercise that you can do in your organizations, is just very simply bring a team together in your company. and then anchor the whole conversation in the purpose. Read the company's purpose statement, and then just discuss what meaningful metrics should we be tracking to know if we're making meaningful progress. Or another way to think about this is if someone outside your company were to read your purpose, what do you think they would expect you to be tracking? So this, don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes it's pretty simple, especially if you have a more one-to-one where the transaction with your company is emblematic of the kind of difference you hope to make. Just how would you track that? So think about that. Well, hopefully that sets the stage a little bit for how to think about these two things working with each other, and gives you some examples, stimulate your thinking. And now we want to dive into how we created key purpose indicators for First United Bank, specifically the Spend Life Wisely Index. Before I get into the nitty gritty of how we did that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and let her tell you a little bit about the purpose, the pillars, some of the things that they do at First United Bank, which are quite extraordinary in terms of their in no way things that you would expect a typical bank to be doing. And then we'll look at how we measured it.
Thank you, Haley. Hello, everyone. Haley mentioned at the start, what our purpose statement is here at First United Bank, which is to inspire and empower others to spend life wisely. And, even internally, when we first started this purpose statement, I would have employees push and say, well, how do we know if we're actually doing that? How do we know if what we're doing is making an impact? And so even internally, we had questions like, well, are we making an impact, or are we just, being a group of nice people? What are we, how much are we moving the needle on this? And then as we started also to share our purpose more externally with folks through like Conscious Capitalism or with our customers and different people, we begin to get questions as well. And so when Haley mentioned the idea of, measuring our purpose, we got really excited about how could we, actually track and measure and be more strategic about our purpose and how to make the biggest impact with that. So when we talk about to inspire and empower others to spend life wisely, spend life wisely to us is 4 different pillars. And those are the financial well-being, faith, health, and personal growth. And so there are things happening inside First United around each of those pillars every day. Aside from just the effort that gets put into those areas and trying to help our stakeholders to spend life wisely in each of those areas, we also invest a lot of resources into it financially as well. We've remodeled all of our physical locations to be able to support these 4 pillars. We've done work on our website to be able to show different education around those. We've actually hired employees that are their whole mission as an employee here at First United Bank is to work to inspire and empower their communities that First United's in these 4 areas. And so we've really all in on our purpose. And of course, as a bank, just similar to all these other companies Haley's mentioned, we have tons of performance metrics that we look at every day here. And so it made sense to us that if we're just as passionate about our purpose, that we begin to track and measure that as well. And, not only for how we're investing the resources, but for us to be able to see, what we do that actually makes the biggest impact to our customers, so we can do more of that and spend less time on other things. So it helps us be just more strategic just help us to make the biggest impact with the resources that we have available, which is encouraging to our employees when they can see all the time and effort they put into it, the difference that it's actually making. So it's been exciting work for us.
Yeah, and as Melissa said, as a bank, they're definitely measuring all of the things that are indicative of a thriving business: the asset size, revenue, the number of locations. They work with Gallup to measure employee engagement. knowing that that engagement translates to all kinds of higher performance measurements. But again, this whole effort was, how do we create key purpose indicators that will let us know if we are fulfilling our promise of creating a thriving life? So we're looking at indicators across the 4 pillars for financial health, physical and emotional health, growth and development, and faith. Now, the tricky thing with First United Bank, as Melissa intimated, a lot of people are like, well, how do we know if we're doing that? How do we know if we're helping people grow in their faith or get physically healthier or, leverage their strengths? These are not things you typically turn to a bank for. So it's a big promise that you can't just say because our checking accounts are up or because our wealth management services are up, it's automatically translating to those things. So we wanted to measure our impact by looking at each one of the pillars and thinking about what are the subjective measures. So how does someone feel about their relationship to that topic? Objective behaviors, like what are the things that, irrespective of your feelings about it, let's get some tangible objective data that would indicate you're doing well on that front. And then what are some of the behaviors that are known contributors to having a positive impact in that arena? And I'll give you some examples. So for financial well-being, they obviously want people, part of spending life wisely is caring for your money, being intentional with your savings and spending and making the most of what you're given. So subjectively, we ask questions like, I have enough money to sustain my lifestyle. I haven't worried about money in the last 7 days. So that's how people feel about it. Objectively, is their credit score at least 700 points? Do they have 2 months of living expenses accessible? Do they have at least 10% of their earnings available for discretionary spending? And then things that we know contribute to financial well-being are things like, in the past month, have they made a purchase for someone you care about? Have you bought an enjoyable experience? Have you paid for a service that saved you time? Because part of spending life well is spending your money well. And we know that there's things that people spend their money on that don't result in any happiness, that actually can create more anxiety and kind of stress. Like material goods are a known thing that have a very short lifespan of a little happiness boost before you're right back to your baseline, versus investing in a vacation with your family or saving time by hiring someone to do a task on your behalf where your time is better spent elsewhere. Those are great ways to spend your money. And the data shows that those contribute to well-being on that front. So we did this for every pillar. For health, we want people to invest in their wellness. So subjectively, do people feel like they have the energy and health to accomplish what they want to do? Do they experience more happiness and contentment than sadness and anxiety in a given day? Objectively, do they have what they need to ensure they're financially prepared for a health event? The number one cause of bankruptcy in the US is a medical crisis. So we want people thinking about, one, if your health is better, you're less likely to succumb to a medical crisis that could have massive financial implications. But we want people to be thinking about being prepared for a health event. Are you living with any chronic lifestyle related conditions, which unfortunately in this country, about 70 to 80% of medical conditions that people struggle with are lifestyle related. Now, the good news of that is we can fix that. It's diet, it's exercise, it's stress. Those are all things. And again, Melissa and the folks at the First United Bank have created all kind of programs to help people with that. So what are some of the known contributors? Do you get enough sleep each day? Are you eating healthy, non-processed foods most of the time? Are you exercising at least 3 times a week? Are you spending time with friends on a weekly basis? If you're familiar with Dr. Vivek Murthy's work, the former Surgeon General, the loneliness epidemic has a massive impact on people's health. So one of the other things First United Bank tries to do is get people together in community, engaging in things like 5K walks and things that just promote togetherness and getting healthier together. The next one is personal growth. So a life well spent is a life where you're enriching your mind. You're never stop learning and growing. So you realize your fullest potential. You're living your purpose. You're achieving your greatest success. So subjectively, we ask people, I know my purpose and it provides me with guidance in life. I know my strengths and I'm getting better at them. Objectively, are you participating in learning opportunities? Are you using your strengths? And the contributors are things like, I meet with people who are not like me on a regular basis. That's a pretty interesting one. If you only stay in your own echo chamber with the same people, it actually inhibits your ability to grow and evolve and develop and expand your mind. I meet with a mentor or someone with I trust. I'm doing things to learn on a regular basis, taking a class, taking up a new hobby, things like that. Again, these are all things you can take a strength finders test and learn your skills and come into the bank branches for different growth and development opportunities on a regular basis. And lastly, faith. This is arguably one of the most deeply meaningful pillars to the people of First United Bank. They say a life well spent is one where you treasure your faith. You allow God to guide your heart to a life of meaning and purpose, serving others with love and compassion. So subjectively, do people feel like they're growing in their love for God? They're growing in their love for others. They're expressing love and kindness. Objectively, are they part of a faith-based community? Do they make tangible contributions of time and resources to their community or in volunteer efforts? And then known contributors, do you spend time reflecting on religious or spiritual content? Do you spend time in community with others? Do you have a gratitude practice? Do you have a prayer or meditation practice that helps you cultivate peace in your life? So that is an overview of all of the metrics. And granted, we worked with one of the world's experts on well-being to validate that these metrics are in fact the ones that are correlated with positive outcomes on each one of these. So this wasn't just a, what do you think it is? Oh, I kind of feel like it's this. There are so many great research organizations in the world that have done the hard work of the thousands of possible things you could look at. They've actually identified the ones that are known contributors and have the most impact on affecting people's well-being. So take advantage of those kind of experts in the world, those kind of partnerships to help you craft indicators that you know actually matter. So how did we design this survey? We actually are doing the Spend Life Wisely Index with the three core stakeholders that the Spend Life Wisely purpose is really geared toward: employees, customers, and the community at large. Irrespective of whether or not they bank with First United, we want to have a ripple effect throughout the community. So we do an annual survey of all First United Bank employees. We do that also with customers across all of the regions and the different types of customers, so we can see if there's any big differences there. And then we'll do biannually, every 2 years, we'll do a survey of residents within a certain radius of First United Bank branches. So how does the survey flow? What does it look like? Well, we start by just asking people to rate their overall well-being in each of these areas. And we look at, are they surviving, struggling, or thriving? We want to kind of see where are they struggling the most, so that we know where to make the right investments to help lift people up as best we can. Then we ask them about Spend Life Wisely resources. Are they aware of the resources that are available, and are they actually utilizing them to help enhance their relationship to each one of the pillars? And then we look at the overall impact of First United on their well-being. So we have some agreement questions like, my relationship with First United has inspired and empowered me to improve my financial well-being, to improve my faith, to improve my personal growth. And then we have all the demographics, so we can really drill down and see, do young people, old people have different things they're struggling with? People rural versus more urban have different needs. And you can really be nuanced as to where you make your investments to be as relevant as possible. So the good news is, just on an awareness level, 100% of employees, that's not surprising, are aware of the pillars. You can't step foot inside a First United Bank branch or their headquarters without being confronted in a positive way with Spend Life Wisely messaging. The purpose, the values, the vision, the stakeholder tree they're reminders of what you stand for everywhere you look. They've done a wonderful job of harnessing their brick and mortar locations to reinforce the purpose and values, and then it's backed up with service and offerings that people can take advantage of. And when it comes to customers, about half of our customers, or First United Bank's customers, are aware of the Spend Life Wisely promise and the pillars. Now, 54%, you might be like, oh, that's just barely half. But if you think about a bank, and that you have almost half of your bank giving you credit for faith, health, personal growth. That's a pretty great number. We know we want that to be higher, but it gives us a good indication that we're doing a pretty good job on the awareness front. Now, what's the efficacy of the offerings that we have? Like, is utilization of the Spend Life Wisely services and experiences correlated with higher life satisfaction? And the good news is this is where there's about 12 different things that we've kind of bucketed together: lobby items, Spend Life Wisely website, articles, calculators, books, budgeting tools, checklists, video websites, all of these things. We want to know what's actually working if they're being used. So this is kind of an eyesore of a chart to see, but what it says is the customers who are thriving have significantly higher utilization rates of the Spend Life Wisely resources. So you can see that blue thriving line. Those are people who have the highest rates of actually using the Spend Life Wisely things. And the people who are struggling have the lowest utilization. Now, in the grand scheme of things, we want utilization to be much higher than 16, 14%. So we know we've got work to do in getting people to adopt and participate and utilize the offerings, but at least we know that when they use them, they work. There's a very clear correlation between utilization and impact, which is a great thing.
Haley, this piece was really inspiring to our employees that are hands-on with our customers, because it showed them, sometimes I think they can be, feel awkward to try to talk to customers about health and wellness or about faith, but when they saw, gosh, when we do that, their whole well-being goes up. That's been really encouraging. So
yeah, it should be heartening to see that what you're doing is working, but we need to get more people doing it and hopefully give them the confidence, as you say, and the permission to do more of it. And then just overall perceived value to Spend Life Wisely enhance their relationship. Customers gave First United credit for improving their lives in fundamental ways, and they were more likely to be satisfied, to be loyal, to promote First United Bank. So it had real performance impacts as well. But it's I find it pretty amazing that when you ask a banking customer, did First United Bank improve your financial well-being? Well, hopefully that's right in our wheelhouse. But have they helped me spend life wisely? A third say yes. Have they inspired and improved my overall well-being? A quarter say yes. My personal growth, my health, about a quarter say yes. That's a pretty extraordinary attribution to give to your bank, is helping you in those really fundamental ways. So the main learnings, Melissa, you want to go over kind of these key learnings that for you as in your role at First United have been really powerful?
yeah, I would say, definitely the more resources they take advantage of, the better off they're reporting that their well-being is. So that's been encouraging. Also we have 6 regions that our footprints in, and looking across those 6 regions, that 54% that had awareness around our pillars and these offerings was very consistent across all of those regions. But we're able to see some of the metro versus some of the more rural areas, what pillars we needed to talk and focus on shifted for those. So those have been other things that has been interesting for us to look at each region and see, not only what do we need to be focusing on as a company to move the needle on our purpose, but specifically in each of our markets. And so that's been helpful. And to, also just look per pillar, how people want to, how they want to interact with each of those. And so, yeah, I think those are big takeaways. When people attend, they make an impact. What we do matters. It's moving the needle in our communities. Each of our regions are doing the work, but there's opportunity to keep going. And then definitely within the 4 pillars, we can see the ones that we have the biggest opportunity to continue to help our communities.
Awesome. So for your own organizations, which hopefully we've given you some some stimulus to think about the application in your own companies. When you're assessing the quality of your key purpose indicators, you want to think about, when you think about your purpose and you're developing things, is this something that's measurable? Can you reasonably and confidently measure whatever it is that you're thinking of? Is it relevant? Do you have good data to suggest that what you're measuring actually matters? And then is it actionable? Will knowing this give you information that you can act on? So those are just a kind of litmus test that as you're developing this for your organizations, is it measurable? Is it relevant? Is it actionable? And just two final little purpose exercises that you may want to consider doing with your team is just think about creating your own key purpose indicators. You know, what should or could you track in order to measure progress against your purpose? And really challenge yourself to think about what's the most meaningful thing we could measure that would generate enormous pride if we could impact it for the better. So that when you get to that annual meeting at the end of the year, you're not just talking about comp store sales growth and, you know, sales per square foot or whatever the KPI, traditional key performance indicator is, but you've actually got some meaningful indicators of impact that are going to make your people feel much more vested in their work and much more proud to be a part of your organization. Another way that you can think about KPIs that are going to be meaningful is to map stakeholder impact. So write down all the key stakeholders that are affected by your company's purpose. In the case of First United Bank, they think equally about their employees, their customers, and their communities. Vendors and suppliers too also, but really those top three are their key stakeholders that they invest the most time in. So map out who are your company's key stakeholders, and then for each stakeholder, what specific purpose-driven impact do you aim to have? It might be the same for all. And again, in the case of First United Bank, we have the exact same set for each stakeholder. We don't differentiate, oh, among customers, we want to have a different kind of impact, but you may, depending on your business. And then just be very thoughtful and intentional about what metrics could you use to measure the impact you aspire to have in the lives of each stakeholder you serve. So if anybody has a great key purpose indicator for their organization that they'd like to share, I'm always love to find examples. I know that I'm sure of the people who are participating here, there's bound to be some wonderful examples of this is our purpose and this is how we're measuring it. So drop it in the chat so that we can all benefit from the best practices that are crowdsourced from those gathered here today. So tell us your purpose and your key purpose indicator. And or we can unmute you and have you share. But I think we have a little bit of time. I don't know what time it is. I just start talking until someone tells me to stop for questions and reflections. And then I might also have Michael tee up a little poll that I would be interested in getting your take on. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody again.
Thank you, Haley, and thank you, Melissa. And again, just tagging on to the invitation from Haley there to, you know, drop in a chat. We do love to gather those and see those, and this is an opportunity for two experts to react to those. So feel free to drop your KPIs, your key purpose indicators, into the chat if you have them, and we'll react to those. Or any other questions that you may have had that have come up during today's conversation. Haley, I actually have one for you and Melissa before any of our audience drops them into chat. As people endeavor to do this work, do you have any recommendations on the number of KPIs that someone might want to develop? 1, 2, 4, 5? Does it matter?
I don't think it matters. Like in the case of Southwest Airlines giving people the freedom to fly, well, 15% flew when we started, now 95% have flown, you know, or here's the Southwest effect with the 20% lift. It might be that it can be super simple, powerful, small set. Mm-hmm. If you, I think it probably the answer to that is going to depend on, I don't want to say, like when you think of First United Bank's purpose of inspiring and enabling people to spend life wisely with these 4 pillars, by design, that's going to require a more, not complicated, but a more thoughtful set of indicators to look at how you're doing that. You think about Bhutan gross domestic happiness. Well, there's 33 indicators that are going to give you a sense of from everything. Are people sleeping well to do they feel safe in their communities? There's a lot going on there. But if your purpose, so I would say use your purpose to be the guide that will answer that question. If you can arrive at a great set of indicators that give you a sense of fulfillment of your purpose in 3 indicators, great. There's no need to overcomplicate it, but you don't want to shortchange it. If you have a purpose, again, like I said, that's a little more, I don't want to call it more ambitious, but sometimes more nuanced, a little more multifaceted. Let me say that. If your purpose is more multifaceted, then you're going to want a more multifaceted set of indicators to reflect that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then just as a follow-up question, I know in the case of First United, when you're in the First United offices, it's very evident for those employees to see that purpose, visualize those KPIs. They're on walls. When you're communicating with external stakeholders, what's an effective way to kind of communicate with that audience that's maybe, again, falls under the umbrella of external stakeholders? Annual report, for example, or how is that communicated?
Yes, Michael, that's a good question. We're still working on, Haley and I've spent a lot of time trying to get these KPIs, just identifying what they are, what we wanted to know, and then actually doing the research on them. And work this year to be done for me and my teams is actually how do we share this? And an annual impact report's a great place to do that. We already do one of those. But what I would also like to do with this and encourage others to do is, like, I would love to use this to go to other people in our communities that maybe care more about one of the other 3 pillars. So like our faith-based community, and show them, hey, I just wanted to share some of this great data with you to maybe, show that community that, hey, when you offer things about like Financial Peace University or programs for kids that get them active, like that impacts the faith, their reflection of their faith as well, and other places that may be focused on health and wellness in our community, just to share the data that we have. So that's something I'm looking forward to doing, and would encourage others, if your KPIs are beneficial to your partners that are helping you do your work, and live out your purpose, or employees, community. It's just great information to have and share with others.
Wonderful.
The other thing, just quickly, that comes to mind, Michael, when in response to that is, there's been talk of this, the cynical response that a lot of consumers may have to the whole conscious capitalism purpose movement. You hear about purpose washing. Oh, that's your purpose, but is it credible? Are you walking the talk? So having key purpose indicators that are meaningful, that are tracked in credible ways, and that you can put on your website. Like Patagonia does a great job of talking about the rewilding that they do, the environmental protection they do, the lawsuits that are underway to protect the lands that we love. And so to me, it's a wonderful way to combat the natural cynicism that a lot of people have towards quote unquote purpose washing today.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Haley. I know that's something Patagonia does. Obviously, there's sort of third-party verification of the work that they're doing, right? I mean, when you're measuring environmental impact, it's very tangible, data-driven. You can say, look, we were operating in this area and there were these environmental changes. So I'm actually glad you brought up the purpose washing question, because I know it was a term I learned actually just quite recently. And it's almost it's the opposite of the work we endeavor to do, right? Like getting very clear on our purpose, but of course you're going to have a cohort of people who are challenging you and saying, why are you doing this? And are you just purpose washing? So I'm glad you did that.
Hey, Michael, since I'm just looking at the time, I'd love it if you wouldn't mind throwing the little poll up. I have a quick
Yes, absolutely.
and I'll give you a little context for it. There's been just enormous interest in the notion of creating purpose indicators, and we're working on a paper to be published soon. And the question has come up: what should we actually call these? I've been calling them key purpose indicators because I like the play on key performance indicators and having this set. But some people might find that confusing, and so the alternative nomenclature of strategic purpose indicators has come up. So I'd like to put it to the group as a quick poll of, when you think about everything we've been talking about today, what do you think is the clearest and most compelling way to describe this set of indicators? Should we call it key purpose indicators, or should we call it strategic purpose indicators? This is just my little bonus personal interest question that I'd appreciate the group's thoughts on.
So the poll is live. I thank you for those contributors.
Yeah, and of course, if anybody has any questions while this is coming in, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or drop it in the chat. I'm always happy to, and as I know Melissa is too, to share any stories from the front lines of doing this.
Yeah, and if anyone does want to unmute and you're having a challenge, just feel free to drop into chat, and I can jump over to the attendee queue and quickly unmute you. It looks like key purpose indicators is the lead. I'll go ahead and share the results. Just in case you and Melissa can't see. As a follow-up, the email that goes out, I'm happy to also include this poll for you, Haley, there as well, for the people that were registered but did not attend, so that they can answer this question for you.
Okay, great.
Go ahead. So Jesse just made a comment. The poll is hard to decide. I can see the confusion between with KPI and KPI, but I prefer key to strategic as a modifier. Thank you, Jesse. We've got about 5 minutes left. Again, just a call for any questions. Feel free to drop those into chat. I'll ask the final question, unless we see one rolling here in a second or two. But both Melissa and Haley, what are say 2 to 3 things that you would want people to leave today's conversation either knowing or curious about or endeavoring to do?
Gosh, mine would be to not overcomplicate it, or let it, or let kind of not knowing where to start hinder you from starting. You know, Haley mentioned we partnered with a big research company. Her and I both invested a lot of time and energy into it, but it can be as simple as the question of, like in our case, is First United inspiring and empowering you to spend life wisely? So it could be a very easy survey done. So I think that I would just say start somewhere. You can always add to it and build on it, but don't wait to get started on it. And just also wanted to share, for us internally, like we're reporting to the board on this. You know, we view this just like key performance indicators. I'm held accountable for seeing these numbers grow. So but start somewhere so that you can start just even driving awareness to the importance of it, and you can always grow it over time.
Yeah, I would just second that. I 100% concur. Don't be intimidated by it. That's why I have that blatantly obvious exercise framing, is like, read your purpose to your mom, your kids, whomever, and say, what do you think we should be measuring if this was our purpose? And see what they say. And so just start there, keep it simple, and then do get your board involved. I mean, the board of First United, they all reviewed literally the indicator list that we were developing, gave their feedback, because it's their responsibility to hold the organization accountable to the goals, not just the financial goals and performance goals, but also the purpose goals if it's a purpose-driven business. So include your board or your key leadership stakeholders for sure in this endeavor.
Wonderful. Well, just in closing, I want to thank you both for joining us. We've done this a few times before, but it's always a delight to have you speak to the Conscious Capitalism audience. Those that attended, thank you. We will be making a recording of this available that you can go back and review. And yeah, just wishing everyone, thank you, Jesse. Fabulous and thought-provoking presentation. So kudos, Haley and Melissa. And yeah, just a very, very happy new year to everyone and wishing everyone a great start to the new year. And we shall catch you soon on another virtual gathering.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.